Hi, my name is Chris Ying. We are continuing to try to defeat our children in winning mealtime. This is a dish, a recipe that is a conglomeration of a bunch of things, but at its core, it is ribs. Somehow or other, this dish has come to be known in my house as Kid McGear bones. And I have refused to list it as anything else on our spreadsheets and run sheets, and the rest of the crew here has been confused every time I've mentioned Kid McGear bones, but that's what my son calls them, and that's what I'm gonna call them too. So it's a little Chinese, it's very Chinese, but it's not anything specific. It's sweet and sour is the flavor of this. It is kind of a sticky sauce on these ribs. They're not fall off the bone in the way that you might be used to if you're just eat barbecue ribs, but it has that same flavor profile of sweet and sour and savory, just like barbecue sauce, except for this is made with black vinegar and sugar and not molasses and ketchup and all that in this sort of traditional American style. So these are St. Louis style ribs, excuse me. If you can get the actual spare rib, the little, the smaller portion of ribs that are like this big, spare ribs, that's ideal. I'm gonna break this down into small pieces for no other reason than that's how my kids like them. But you might be like, why do you need to break them down then? Just do the whole rib and make the kids eat it. You make my kids eat it because they won't eat them if they're not broken down into small pieces. Jokes aside, breaking this down into smaller bits is a pain in the butt, but sometimes that's all it is. It's just presentation. Our kids are like weird food competition judges or something. They need it in a more manageable size or a more appealing color, or just that's sometimes just the whole barrier is just, oh, these are so cute, they're so fun to eat, I like to eat it this way. Oh, this cauliflower is rainbow and colorful, these carrots are different colors. That's the whole game. So yes, totally unnecessary step if you're feeding adults only, but if you're feeding kids, my kids at least, they need this extra step. So I'm gonna do it just because I brought my own cleaver from home because I'm gonna be hacking through this bone. But first I'm gonna separate each of these right down the center between each of them, like so. And so how these became named Kid McGear bones, I'm not sure. It was at that funny age with my son where they're speaking with, some sort of mastery of the language, like in formed sentences, but sometimes they say something and you're just like, that's not how any of those words work. I don't know what you're trying to say to me. And there's a book called Goodnight Construction Site. Goodnight Construction Site. Very popular series. I'm not going to break this one. This one's going to be what it is. And there's a skid steer character named Kid McGear. And one day, my son was like, we're eating Kid McGear bones. But he was happily eating them. So rather than me correcting him and be like, no, we're not eating the carcass of a beloved children's book character, I was like, yeah, Kid McGear bones. We're eating Kid McGear bones. So now that's what they're called in my house. Maybe that's what they'll be called in your house. So he likes, like I said, spare ribs are probably about that big. So I'm gonna hack these in half and just pop them in here. Actually, there's like a natural break in some of these that I'm going to lean into, but some of them don't. But just like I said, sometimes they just want them in more manageable sizes. And that's all it takes to get them to eat it. Okay, so spare ribs. You can find them already small and perfect, great. You need to break them down. You saw that didn't take that much effort. My kid will thank me when he gets to eat this he's got small hands. So a big fat rib isn't really gonna help him. So season this with salt. If you have MSG, now's the time to break that out too. Give a little MSG extra umami. I don't have any within reach, so I'm gonna leave it out today. And okay, so here's how this works. We're just gonna cook this very simply with a couple of other sauces. I'm gonna coat this with cornstarch. So in Chinese cooking, you use cornstarch for a process called velveting. It coats the meat with this thin layer of starch, and it gives this mouthfeel, this impression of tenderness. So when you have stir-fried, any sort of stir-fry, usually the meat has been coated in cornstarch first before it gets cooked, and the meat is much more tender. It feels, it's a very different texture. Now, that cornstarch is going to fall off the bones as well, or fall off the ribs as we're cooking them. And I made this dish last night for the kids, and I put too much cornstarch, and what I ended up with was a sauce that was very, very, very gloopy and too thick. And I want just like a little bit of glaze. I don't want them to be super, I don't want like a thick gravy on these. I want like a thin, perfectly glossy sauce. Last night I screwed it up completely, so I'm a little nervous that I'm not gonna do very well today, but I'm gonna use maybe, let's call this a tablespoon of cornstarch for this whole thing of ribs. Maybe even less than that, honestly. And so you'll see some Chinese cooks also just work the cornstarch. They'll put water in here as well and sort of just soak them in a cornstarchy water. That also would work ostensibly. I never do it that way, and I'm just gonna show you how I actually do it instead of making things up. And that's it. So you can let these sit for a minute while you get everything else going. This is another thing that's happened in my house. Yesterday, I made this dish, and my daughter goes, "I don't like kid McGear bones." But I think it's less that she doesn't like kid McGear bones and more that she doesn't like her brother, because she just wants to see him unhappy no matter what. So it's one of his favorite things. I think that mere fact that he loves them means she's going to reject them, which is just more fun things for me to contend with. Big old wok. If you don't have a wok, that's okay. You can do this in a Dutch oven or just a big pan. The whole thing is you just need to be able to fit all of this in there. And preferably in more or less one layer. I mean, you're going to crowd the pan, but if you can get it as close to a layer as possible, that's best, and you'll see why in a minute. So sometimes I put garlic, sometimes I don't. If Lance can get me garlic fast enough to put it in here, then I will. We'll see how fast he can move. So a little ginger. I didn't bother to peel it because, again, half the battle of winning mealtime is not hurting yourself doing it. So they're not going to eat these chunks anyway. They're just there to flavor the ribs and the sauce. So I don't care about peeling them. Nobody's going to chew on these. They're not going to get eaten. Saves me the time. I'm just going to get some scallions. Again, I'm going to leave these in big enough chunks that I can fish them out. Because again, they're not going to eat these either. Here he comes. No, he's going the other way. Oh, there's garlic in here. Just sent you on a whole journey around the world for this. Another key to winning mealtime. Already peeled garlic. Okay, so add even a little bit more oil. I just want to get a little color on these ribs. Just get them to start cooking in here. And we wait. So this is a pretty common flavor that for me as a kid, black vinegar, zhejiang or qingqiang vinegar, zhejiang. It's a rice vinegar that is, what is this? How does it get black? It has a very specific aroma to it. Well, bottom line is, has kind of like a malty flavor to it. It's aromatic. It's delightful. It's often used as a condiment just on its own. I don't want to draw this comparison because it seems very low hanging fruit, but it's almost balsamic in the way that it can be used as that condiment more than in cooking, but I really love the flavor of black vinegar. You got to find this yellow label bottle too if you buy this. If you don't have it, you can use other vinegars. You could use balsamic, whatever you want. So we're not trying to get anything to be too crazy brown here. It's all going to get darkened and blackened from the vinegar anyway. But I don't know if you can really tell, but I think you can kind of see a little bit of how it's glazed with this cornstarch. Can you see it a little bit? It's less like just meat in a pan, and like that is all from that 1 tablespoon of cornstarch I put in there. But we're gonna let that brown for a second longer. I made these last night with pork from one of my favorite pork producers, who's all like never let me down. But I bought these ribs that were like 98% bone and 2% meat. And I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you. My wife said they were inedible. So here I am demonstrating it to you the next day. Hopefully these will be edible. All right, these have gotten a little head start. They've rendered off a good amount of fat. We're gonna proceed here. So first things first, sugar. You can use brown sugar, you can use regular sugar, you can use palm sugar if you have it. You could use honey, molasses, agave. The point is they need a lot of sugar. Chang makes a pretty similar thing that his grandfather used to make with pork belly, where you're just sort of letting the fat and juices from the pork more or less be your cooking liquid. I was gonna add some chicken bouillon, but I've never done that before. I just decided maybe I would, and I asked Kelsey to get some, but I don't think I'm going to, because why would I do it differently than I've ever done it? That seems like a...
Seems super weird. You make this about 4 times a week.
Yeah, why would I just...
And now you're like, I'll just change it.
Just because I want to be cool? Just because I think like, oh, all those like bouillon heads out there are going to be like, oh my God, Chris Yang, bouillon. All right, so a little soy sauce, a little vinegar, or a good deal of vinegar. And that's it. So I want to just, as best I can, get these, like I was saying earlier, you want a big enough pan so that they can all kind of sit in that liquid. You're going to toss it around and move them eventually, but if they can all start submerged, that's great. Cover it, turn it down to a simmer, and let that go. And like I said, Dave makes a similar dish to this with pork belly, where you're just cooking it in it. You're not adding any water. You're not adding any stock or anything. You're just kind of letting it produce its own sauce. Now, that being said, I'm going to keep an eye on this. And if it looks like I'm reducing too much and I'm not getting enough liquid out of the pork, if not enough fat is coming out, and it looks like I'm just burning this thing, then I'm going to pour a little water in to hopefully time this. The ribs will take 15, 20 minutes to be tender. During which time I want there still to be, like I said, enough liquid and for it to start emulsifying, like the vinegar and the fat and the sugar all to sort of become a cohesive, glossy sauce. And hopefully that will all happen without much, if any, interference from me. I just let that go, and hopefully we'll peek back in here a couple minutes and it'll be in a good place. So we will be right back. We'll check in on this thing. We'll toss things around. We'll make some decisions. We'll do this with our fingers and smoke them if you got them. Okay, so these are taking a little longer than I thought they would. Honestly, it's probably been 30 minutes now. But let's check on them and see what's happening in Kid McGear City. Look at that. I mean, it looks delightful. It has done what I said it would do, which is over the course of those 30 slowish minutes of low heat, that vinegar and fat and pork juice and soy sauce have merged into a Voltron of emulsification. Nice glossy sauce. So what you're looking for is this, how the bone starts to kind of pull away, or the meat starts to pull away a little bit from the bone is when they're done. These fatter bits are not done yet. And that's fine, because at my house, the kids get the beautiful, picture-perfect, platonic ideal of a rib, which is 2 little meaty handles and meat on either side, and mom and dad have to gnaw on these fat knuckles of weirdness. That's just sort of our lot in life. That's what happens when you choose to procreate. You get to eat the weird knuckles. So oftentimes, this is ripped from the headlines of life, because several things are at play right now. One, this is taking longer than I thought it would, which is a no-no when it comes to serving dinner. You don't get to serve dinner at your leisure at home with kids or at a restaurant. I forgot to make rice, another thing that happens all the time in my house. I don't love using these. This is just microwavable, fully cooked rice. Not because they're a product that I don't like. I don't love using them for 2 things. One, it's not as good as freshly cooked rice. And 2, I don't like microwaving in this plastic. A lesson I have learned over time. But we keep them on hand for emergencies. And this is one such emergency, because this sauce needs rice. Like, the kids need to eat this with rice or they'll revolt. So what will happen is, to solve all of the various problems I've described, I forgot to cook rice. The kids are screaming at me. In this case, the kids are Ira and Kelsey and Lance. I will serve the ones that are done and let the rest of them keep on going on the stove. So little Keithy, like I said, gets the perfect little ones. I've got to hunt down the ones that look like your picture perfect little rib, while the rest of us have to deal with the not so perfect ones. But that's what they look like. I'll let the rest of these simmer for a little bit. Ooh, look at that one. Keith, you have that one too, buddy. Here's the other thing that happens. He's not super good at eating these, so he'll take his little bites. This happened last night when I made this. And sometimes I don't even get to eat a fresh whole rib. I just eat the rest of the meat on the goddamn bone that he didn't finish. Like, that's my meal. It's gross. It feels gross. It sucks. Last night I did it to ribs, and then this little beautiful child like half ate oranges that I had to finish. I ate a half finished, already chewed orange last night. That was my dinner. Half eaten ribs and half chewed oranges. 2 textural sensations that humans shouldn't have to endure. Okay, I'm gonna eat this rib. Oh, that's perfect. It has, like I said, the same exact flavor zone as barbecue sauce. Vinegary, savory. Look how adorable these little bones are. Your little fella or lass can pick this up with their 2 little paws and just... I will demonstrate for you how much Keith will eat of this and then hand it over to me, though. So it's like, there, I'm there, I'm there. And he's like, done, next bone. What, do I throw this away? I think I'm made out of rib money. So these are, as I said, kidney gear bones. Rice is the real prize. Saucy rice is delightful. And as always, I'm going to tell you, this works 100% of the time with Keith, my son. It works 65% of the time with my daughter, Ruby. Maybe it'll work for you, maybe it won't, but it is in the wheelhouse of little adorable bite-sized food that is a little sweet, very savory, a fun way, hopefully, that your kids will consume some protein, which is the whole game. I'm going to let the big fat knuckles continue to cook for our staff meal. But in the meantime, we're going to move on to other mealtime strategies in our never-ending battle to win mealtime against our kids. Talk to you soon.